We move voluntarily to feel good. We move to get stronger. We move for peace of mind. And some of us move involuntarily, repeatedly. Hello and welcome to Tick Fit, the podcast about meaningful movement, a platform to discuss Tourette syndrome and its effects on our bodies. We'll speak with elite movement professionals and where we can advocate and educate about Tourette syndrome, while the Tourette community can benefit from the expertise of these movement professionals. I'm your host, Raquel Cunningham, and I've been on a quest for the past 2 decades to learn more about the connection between movement, exercise, and our ticking bodies. This is not meant to diagnose or treat Tourette syndrome. There is no cure for Tourette syndrome. We are here to advocate and educate about Tourette syndrome through conversation, and anything in this podcast is for informational purposes only. Please always consult with your doctor before beginning any exercise program to make sure that it is right for you. So today's title, Can Open Worms Everywhere, kind of an allude to a quote from a favorite show of mine, but let's get into it. It's always tricky to figure out how to edit down everything I want to say and share, but the point of doing this is that we can get into the nitty-gritty of everything. So opening up the can of worms, I don't even know if that's a phrase people know anymore, but just we're going to blow open the topic and get into it. So what we are discussing today is co-contracting muscles. What does that mean? When we tick, there's so much happening with our musculature that we may or may not be aware of. Most of the time, we're aware of the area that hurts through training and awareness training, and just the unfortunate nature of repetitive ticks. We really start to understand what area of our body is affected. Whether you have constantly changing ticks, whether you have the same 5 ticks, or whether it's in the same area, but ticks come out in a different kind of orientation every time. Believe it or not, I do think we get really good at understanding our own ticking bodies, and we can do that a little bit more too. But when we move in general, with or without ticks, our muscles work synergistically and antagonistically. And that's how our bodies are designed. When we move synergistically, there are muscles designed to help that moving part of your body. So if we do a bicep curl, right, we're lifting our bicep here, your lower traps are working synergistically to stabilize your shoulder blades so that you can lift more weight. The muscle that would be working antagonistically would be your tricep. To produce the most power out of your bicep, you cannot be engaging that tricep when the bicep is in its most contracted form. And what a co-contracting muscle are those synergistic muscles. Now, when we tick, there are other muscles in our body that are contracting as well, acting as synergists that are not meant to. And this is where kind of we have these body puzzles that we have to decipher, and why this is a very individualized process. But these co-contracting muscles are really kind of surprising. I was working with somebody having them do a serratus push-up. I'm not sure if you know what that means. Basically, you're either in a forearm plank position or a straight arm plank position, and you are protracting and retracting your scapula. Those are your shoulder blades. And as we're doing that, his quad seized up. Now, yes, this is an anterior chain movement, everything working on the front, but the quad shouldn't have been working that hard. And the fact that just one of them seized up so much, we paused, talked about it. What goes on with your neck ticks? He had a lot of neck ticks. That's why we're working on stabilizing his shoulder blade. We had progressed to the point where we could do this exercise. His shoulders were ready for it. And so, sat and thought about it for a bit. And you can kind of recreate your tick to see what feels on the regular for that tick or what might be missing. And as he was trying to figure out his neck ticks, he's like, you're right, not me, right? I didn't point that out, but that there was something else happening with his quad, that the right knee would always lift up at the same time he was ticking as well, which means when he was trying to work the shoulder protraction, that quad was trying to synergistically work at the same time. It's not a bad thing, but now we have more information and more things that we can start to program in his exercises, and things that we can help repattern. What is repatterning? Repatterning is giving your body new movements to work with. Oftentimes we do that for injury. If somebody broke their arm and they're in a sling for a long time, after you take your sling off, however many weeks it is, 4 to 6 weeks, all of a sudden your shoulder is used to that forward hanging position here. And so you would have to repattern, do different shoulder external rotations, do your shoulder alphabet. And I know the shoulder alphabet's kind of getting a lot of flack right now, but there's better ways. It's not just doing strict shoulder external rotations might not be the most effective way to get your shoulder to externally rotate. I do think that single joint movement does have a place when you're trying to decipher what your body's ticking residual effects are on your body. There's a place for all of it. And especially because we tick in really unique angles, is how I can put it, that when you do these single joint exercises, it's a way for you to experience your shoulder in different angles. And then we can adjust and modify. So, are there more effective ways than just a banded shoulder external rotation to get your rotator cuff strong? Absolutely. Are single joint banded shoulder external rotations beneficial for the ticking community? Absolutely. There's a place for everything here. There's no, fear mongering with do this exercise, don't do this exercise. It's all about you experiencing the sensation of that exercise on your body. You understanding where that movement is coming from, mechanically where it should be coming from, and how your body ticks is just a different layer to it. So as we tick in these body puzzles, these twists and jerks, and we talked about it kind of feeling like Morse code coming out, like tick, 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 tick. Your muscles are contracting at that different pace. There's not just one exercise to unlock this body puzzle, but there might be several exercises that we can program to teach new movement patterns that will, one, help reestablish a more balanced musculature and hope that that will lead to less pain and less discomfort from our tics. We know that a great many of us have pain from our tics. I've heard that's one of the most common reasons people seek whatever treatments are available for tics is because they're uncomfortable and they hurt, the repetitive nature of it. And as we do them for years and years and years, there's a valid concern that we might be causing injury to these repetitive motions that are not mechanically sound. So that's what opening up the can of worms is all about today, trying to figure out what these new patterns can be on your body, how you can explore them, how they might benefit you. And the thing that works is the thing that works. I do have programs available if you go to tickfit.org, but if my programs don't work for you, I want to bring other movement professionals on here as another option for you to go and explore what they might have to offer and if those movement patterns work for your body. Again, the thing that works is the thing that works, and you might have to try a lot of things. Two people and books that have really informed a lot of what I'm doing is, number one, Becoming a Supple Leopard by Dr. Kelly Starrett. This is an amazing book that you can flip open to. There's joint mobilizations, there's form techniques, there's so much in here that you can explore your own body and start to move these pieces to decipher what other muscles on your body are co-contracting. Should they be, or is that a result of your tics? You're the only one that can answer that, but there's a way to do that. The other book that has recently come out that has absolutely just floored me is Body by Breath by an incredible yoga instructor named Jill Miller. And she, obviously, there's a lot of talk about breath with what I do as well. There's a lot to tap into the parasympathetic state, which is a really muddled down way of saying, take a breath, it's going to calm you down. I don't want to say that to our community because we are probably burnt out on hearing that. What I love about her approach is she also gives techniques for how to release the bound up musculature that has been compensating when we're breathing not as optimally as we could be. And there's a lot of really incredible information in there to feel when breath goes into your body. How does your body accept it? What moves? There's this incredible diaphragm muscle that doesn't have good proprioception on its own, which means it doesn't often know where it is. So many times I've discovered people, are chesty breathers where they're breathing up into their neck and the upper part of their thoracic cavity. And how curious that a lot of us have neck tics, a lot of us have breathing tics. And if we're breathing improperly anyways, all of that goes into your neck muscles. So for breathing just normally without tics up into our chest cavity, the neck, the scalenes, your sternocleidomastoid, your upper trap, your levator scap, all of those are involved when you don't necessarily have to be. And then when you tic with your neck, what do you think's working? Those same usual suspects that I just mentioned. So I also love her book because you can feel your breath shift into different parts of your body. You can feel your lower rib cage open. You can feel where you're tight in different musculature. The same with Becoming a Supple Leopard with Dr. Kelly Starrett's book. You can, big thing I learned from that book was banded distractions, which is creating space in your joints. As a water polo player, there's a whole lot of hip internal rotation when you're treading water. And as you're doing that, once you go to land and you try to run with this massive amount of hip internal rotation, boom, there's a hip impingement. There's all of these other really uncomfortable ways. There's glute inhibition, which is not what you want. You want your glutes to be active and propelling you forward. So that was a really incredible way to create some space within my hips and repattern my body with how to get my glutes to fire. It took me about 6 months to do a hip pry. If you don't know what that is, that's your ass to grass squat, but you're mobilizing. And so I would use a kettlebell, and you can create this opening within your hip capsule. And again, it took me 6 months to do that regularly. Like, training is my job. It's not just because you're a trainer doesn't mean that you automatically do everything right. You have to work for it, and you keep working for it. So another thing that took me 6 months to get, actually, it probably took me close to a year and a half, was a pull-up. It took a year and a half to train through all of the sequences to do a pull-up. Why do I bring up the longevity of that? So we'll have some people on coming up soon to really talk about CBIT and what that is. But if we're looking to do the opposite motion, train the opposite muscles of our ticking muscles, well, what if that opposite exercise you're not ready for? Well, then we can train up to it. I think a lot of times with the head tics, people are recommending chin tucks, which is where you retract your chin. You're working your deep neck flexors and extensors, and it kind of ends there. What if that doesn't give you as much relief as it could? What if a chin up hold? What if a lat pull? What if an eccentric pull up can help? Well, there's a way to build up to that. And you do that with a program. You create an adaptation over time with progressive overload. And I call the beginning phase of training the tinkering phase. That's your first phase. We've got to figure out where you're strong, what's firing that shouldn't be firing, what's not firing that we want to be firing, and can you feel it? Can you engage with your body that way? So training up to what a great exercise for your body to receive this information. And when I say information, I mean to feel a muscle connect that you've never connected before, that is the opposite of your ticking muscle, your lower trap, your serratus, your entire core system. The core is much more complicated, not complicated, but there's much more involved than the six-pack rectus abdominis muscle. There's a whole lot more going on in there. So can open, worms everywhere. There's a lot of body puzzling to decipher. And as a trainer, I actually find it really intriguing. I don't find the pain intriguing. That's the part we want to help. But to figure out the nature of these body puzzles and what exercise programming being the the laid out plan for what exercises to do to balance out these twisting motions that we have, I find really hopeful for our community. And I'm very excited to continue sharing that with you. While we love having a platform where we share ideas about moving with Tourette syndrome and other tic disorders, we make every effort to make this as evidence based as possible. Understand that exercise science, information about Tourette, and information about any of its co occurring conditions to Tourette are constantly changing. By listening to this podcast, you agree to not use any of this information as medical advice or treatment for yourself or your child. Consult your doctor for any medical condition you or your child might be having, and that includes mental health conditions as well. This entire disclaimer includes any guests or contributors to the podcast as well. Thanks for listening.